When the wave rises, it does not ask permission. A tone in a text that is sharp, a glance in a meeting that carries contempt, a family remark that hooks an old story. Before a sentence forms in the mind, the body surges. The heart moves up into the throat. Heat flashes at the back of the neck, and in that instant we think we have lost. No, that instant is not loss. That instant is not your failure. That first movement is not sin, not weakness. It is the world tapping at your door. That first movement is your opportunity to remember God before you sign the paper that gives the storm dominion. We have been trained to believe that the problem is the feeling itself. We scold ourselves for the contraction. We make vows to be better next time, and we call that spirituality. That is not spirituality, that is moralism. It will not carry us into the secret place. The Master did not say, "Be a Stoic." He said, "Abide. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High, there is the instruction." Now the question for us is, what takes place in the first breath, before the mind grabs the gavel and renders judgment? We must understand the spiritual stakes of that breath. It is not merely that reactions create consequences in the outer scene. Reaction, in the language of spirit, is consent. It is our agreement to a second power, to a cause apart from God, to which we grant reality and authority. When we flare, we say to the appearance, "You have power over me." And when we pause, even for a heartbeat, we withdraw that consent. We return to the one power, the only power, the presence that is already here. Thou couldst have no power over me unless it came from the Father in heaven. Either that is the truth we live by, or we continue to live by two powers, and the storms will instruct us until we tire of them. Let us make our governing maxim plain, not as poetry for a wall, but as practice for this hour. Reaction is consent. Non-reaction is remembrance. Non-reaction is not passivity, not indifference, not a cold face that hides boiling thought. Non-reaction is remembrance, and remembrance is not a thought about God. Remembrance is the turn within to the felt awareness that God is. Be not afraid. God is. In that awareness, the wave that rose meets the shore of the infinite and must lay itself down. So we ask the guiding question that will carry us through our time together. What do we do when emotion rises, but we refuse to give it dominion? We do not grit our teeth. We do not rehearse a better argument. We do not edit the text for 20 minutes and call it wisdom. We turn. We turn from the outer scene to the inner fact. God is. We take the first breath home. We let the Word abide in us, and we abide in the Word until the sense of a second power cannot find a landing place. In other words, we change government from the fluctuating rule of appearances to the government of the Spirit. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. And when you give it that first instant of room, when you do not rush to be judge, jury, and executioner, truth begins to govern. Well, of course, you will say, but the body is already aflame and the thought is already forming. Yes, the sea tries to run its old route. That does not matter. The first instant is not measured by how quickly you can silence the surge. It is measured by what, in the surge, you consent to as power. Right there, while the heat is in the neck, you can refuse to sign. Right there, while the thought is forming, you can choose to let it dissolve before it matures into speech. How? By granting only one fact the dignity of consent. God is. And if your lips must move, let them move within. Be still and know. Be not afraid. God is. Now, I am not offering you a theory to admire and forget by supper. I am pointing you to an experiment you can conduct before you are out of this room, and certainly when you step into the traffic and the headlines and the voices waiting for you. The experiment is simple. The next time the wave rises, and it will, suspend your verdict, refuse to hurry, refuse to explain, refuse to defend. Turn inward 1 inch and dwell, even 2 breaths, even one in the awareness that presence is the only power here. If you cannot find words, let the silence say it. If you need words, let them be the simplest. God is, and rest there until the sharp edge dulls, until you can look out without a personal sword in your hand. We are not after a better personality, we are after abiding. A better you will still quarrel with a world of two powers. Abiding in God discloses a different basis of life. If you abide in the Word, and if you let the Word abide in you, you will find that the wave can rise without drowning you, that the wind can howl without moving the root. This is not a promise of a life without waves. It is the revelation of a life in which waves do not govern. In proportion as we live and move and have our being in God, in that proportion the storm cannot sign our name to its decree. Try it right here, quietly. Bring to mind the last sharp tone that hooked you, the last little disrespect, the last family remark that felt like an old wound pressed by a new hand. Let the body show you its habitual move. Watch the first flicker of heat. Then, before you think the next thought, set the inner seal. God is. Consent to nothing else. Do not make a project of calming down. Do not make a law court out of your thinking. Open the door of the secret place and step inside. Abide and let the wave break itself on the shore of that abiding. This, then, is our foundation for all that follows. The first instant is not failure, it is invitation. The invitation is to remembrance. The practice is the inward turn. The fruit will not come from hearing me. It will come from what you do with this in the moment the wave rises. Keep this maxim close where no one needs to see it but you. Reaction is consent. Non-reaction is remembrance. And with the next breath, let us begin to live it. Be not afraid. God is. Now let us uncover the hidden agreement we keep making, and we make it so quickly that many of us call it being human and never question it. The agreement is this: we look at an insult and consent to its authority to humiliate. We look at a report of lack and consent to its authority to limit. We look at sickness and consent to its authority to govern life. We look at betrayal and consent to its authority to define us. In other words, we enthrone a second power beside God and then ask God to come compete with it. And then, when the battle feels real, we say, "You see, there are two powers." No, there are never two powers. There is our belief in two powers which animates a shadow and bows down to it as law. Now, of course, we are not scolding ourselves for the first flicker. The first flicker is the world knocking. It is not our consent. But notice what follows in the second breath. The words begin to march. How dare they? I'll show them. If this doesn't change by Friday, and even if we never speak it out, we rehearse it within. We sharpen our sarcasm so it will seem like wit. We withdraw into silence, but inwardly we argue for hours. We write a speech we will never give and deliver it to the mirror. We go to a screen and scroll down a well of doom to be outraged on schedule. We baptize anger as discernment and call it spiritual maturity. We tell our side to 3 friends for comfort and call that prayer. All of this is reaction, not because the action in the world is right or wrong, but because we have already granted the world a power it does not possess. Let us have a little classroom with the soul and ask the only questions that matter. If God be omnipresent, where would a power called humiliation live? In what space could it exist if all space is full of God? If God be the law of this universe, what law is there that can compel me to strike back? Who signed that statute? If God be life, what life can a rumor have? What breath sustains a figure in a bank book that claims to be my source? If God be substance, what substance is there in a label, a diagnosis, a headline, that it should rule my peace? If it be true that God is the one power, and it is, then any sensation or appearance that claims power for itself must first borrow mine. It must ask me to sign, and in reaction, I sign. Now you may say, but if I do not react, I will be walked on. If I do not defend, I will lose. No, we are not speaking of passivity, nor of stuffing emotions into a corner and calling that holiness. Suppression is only another mask of reaction. It is fear made polite. Non-reaction in the way of the Spirit is the refusal to enthrone a second power. It is the pause in which we return to the government of God and let action, if any be required, flow out of that government. The Master did not react to the storm. He rebuked it. He did not react to accusation. He stood silent before Pilate and said, "Thou couldst have no power over me unless it were given thee of the Father." That is not passivity. That is dominion. And when action came, stretch forth thine hand. Go, wash, feed them. It was not driven by fear. It was born of one power. So watch with me the subtlety of our habit. Reaction is not only the raised voice, it is the clever barb that leaves the room laughing and the soul sick. It is the smile that hides a month of cold distance. It is the inner court we convene at midnight to try a brother without his presence. It is self-justification repeated like beads on a mallah. It is the hungry hand that reaches for the next piece of news to fuel indignation. It is spiritual outrage, that peculiar fever that imagines God needs my heat in order to set the world right. These are all forms of the same thing, an idol erected from appearance to which we offer our attention, our breath, our peace. Christ consciousness is not a mood. It is the lived awareness that God alone is. In that awareness, appearances cannot confer power on themselves. A wave cannot proclaim itself ocean. A shadow cannot pronounce itself substance. Disease is not healed by a greater power conquering a lesser. Disease as power is found to be nothing. Lack is not supplied by a stronger dollar canceling a weaker. Lack as law is dissolved in the recognition that the law is God and the substance is spirit. Betrayal is not cured by vindication. Betrayal as identity is unmasked when I remember that my life is hid with Christ in God, and no hand can reach into that secret place to take it. This is the secret. We are not to be grateful when the form shifts and seems to agree with us. We are to be grateful that the Spirit reveals that form has no dominion. Be not afraid. God is. Now then, what do we do when the next appearance knocks? We pause one breath, not as a technique to get our way, but as an act of worship. We withdraw the signature. We refuse to give humiliation a throne, lack a scepter, sickness a crown, a person a lordship. We return to the one power. We let the word abide in us. God is. And in that remembrance, if action is required, it will come as clarity without poison, firmness without fear, speech without the tremor of self-defense. If no action is required, we will know it also and be still. You can't use truth, but truth can use you, and it uses you when you stop hiring rival powers to run your inner government. Let us make our private covenant here. We will not serve two masters. We will not pretend a storm can write law over the one who made the sea. We will not let a face, a figure, a fact on paper define the boundary of our peace. We will practice the pause that withdraws consent, not once, not twice, but as the new habit of a life lived under one power. And in proportion as we do, you will find that your world begins to mirror it. The same waves may rise, but there is no believer to sustain them. They fall back into the sea from which they had only ever borrowed their seeming. Be not afraid. God is. Now we must be very clear with one another on this point, because here is where many stumble and imagine they have failed, when in truth they have merely not yet entered the right room. Christ consciousness is not a mood. It is not a pleasant feeling after a meditation, a glow we try to maintain by will. a poised face, nor a refined temperament that can smile while the heart seethes. Christ consciousness is abiding in the secret place of the Most High. It is the steady awareness, steady not because of our discipline, but because of God's nature, that we live and move and have our being in God, even while the outer scene still looks turbulent. It is the I within, the Father within me that doeth the works, becoming the government of our awareness, so that appearances cannot draft us into their service. When the psalm says, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty," it does not speak of a church building, a mountain cave, or a perfect silence in the room. It speaks of a posture within. It is the turning of attention, the resting in a presence that is not a thought about God, but the very felt isness of God here. It is that quiet recognition that is the prayer of prayers. God is. In that recognition, the senses still report waves, the headlines still move ink on paper, the body may still be warm with the afterglow of a startled nervous system. But in the secret place, we are not consulting these as law. We are not seeking from them our cue. We have changed where we live. Now, of course, someone will say, "Isn't that just calm? I can become calm by willpower. I can slow my breath and count to 10 and remain composed." Well, of course, composure has its place, and the nervous system appreciates a quiet breath. But do not confuse a lid on a kettle with removing the fire. Willpower calm rests on effort. It is the personal me managing me. It is admirable. It is often socially useful, but it does not change government. It attempts to keep the storm out by bars and bolts. It imagines if I can only become disciplined enough, nothing will shake me. And sooner or later, something does. Abiding is not self-management. Abiding reveals that the storm, as power, has no jurisdiction in the presence. It is not that you keep the storm at bay. It is that in the recognition of one power, the category storm loses the authority to dictate your state. Be not afraid. God is. Let us put this in very practical language. Abiding is not repeating phrases to make life obey you. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. The Word is not a tool we wield to bend appearances. The Word is the living self-revelation of God within us, and our task is to let it abide. If you abide in the Word, and if you let the Word abide in you, you shall bear fruit richly. Notice the two movements. To abide in the Word is our consent. To let the Word abide in us is our surrender. We give up attempting to maintain a spiritual mood, and we yield to the reality that already is. We do not stand in a storm chanting God is as an incantation to wrestle the wind. We rest in God is as the fact from which we see the wind's report for what it is. Noise without law, motion without authority. How does this feel? It will feel at times like stepping back half an inch from the screen of the world. The words in the email are there. The tone in the meeting is there. The bank figure is there. But we are not pressed against it. We have entered the closet and shut the door, not a wooden door, but the door of consent, and we commune with the Father in secret. There, without language if possible, with a simple God is if words are needed, we let the felt sense of presence become the only fact we are yielding to. We are not trying to feel holy. We are consenting to be honest about what is. God is. If God be all in all, what rival power is there left to resist? If God be substance, what substance remains in the shadow to frighten me? If God be law, what separate statute is there left to bind me? In that recognition, the inner weather shifts of itself. Not because we changed an outer condition, but because we ceased to worship it. Watch the Master. He did not wander about arousing himself to courage for each new scene. He abided. Whether a storm rose or an accusation was thrown or a sickness presented itself, the government did not change. I can of my own self do nothing. The Father within me He doeth the works. That is not a sentence for a book. That is the anatomy of Christ consciousness. In that consciousness, he slept in a storm, and when awakened by the frightened, he stood and rebuked it. He touched what others feared to touch. He did not react to Pilate, for there was nothing in him that believed in a second power, to rail against or to placate. This is our pattern, not mood, but abiding, not arousing, but resting, not posture for the eyes of men, but the hidden manna of the heart. Do not mistake this for indifference to the world. It is precisely because we abide where storms have no authority that our action, when it comes, is pure. It is not tinged with the poison of self-defense. It is not hurried by fear. It is not weighted by the need to win. From abiding, we can say yes, we can say no, we can take a stand, we can be still. But in none of these have we first bowed to an idol. There is only one power. In the experience of that one, the root belief in separation, the ancient story that there is a me here and a God somewhere else, a problem here and a solution somewhere else, dissolves. And with that root dissolved, emotional storms do not merely get managed. They end, for they have lost their believer. So let us cease aspiring to a permanent spiritual mood and begin dwelling. Let us consent to be lived. Let us make the inner turn, not as an emergency technique when the wind howls, but as our habitat. Make the secret place your home address. Live, as the apostle said, hidden with Christ in God, so that your life cannot be reached by a rumor, a glance, or a fluctuating number. In proportion as we dwell there, something beautiful, simple, and utterly practical takes place. Peace becomes your atmosphere, not because the air outside has changed, but because you breathe the breath of God within. And peace, when it governs, is not fragile. It is not a balance we fear to disturb. It is the presence that reveals there is no rival. We will, in a moment, take up the exact inward turn, for I know some of you are saying, how do I enter that secret place when the world is shouting? But even now you can taste it. Right where you sit, without changing your face or fixing your thoughts, let the inner acknowledgement arise and rest. God is. Be not afraid. God is. This is not mood. This is the end of mood as master. This is not control. This is release. This is not managing the sea. This is remembering the ocean. And in that remembrance, the storm finds no law to lean upon and must lay itself down. Now, let us be very simple and very exact, because a principle that cannot be practiced in one breath is not yet ours. The outward scene knocks, a tone, a figure, an image appears, and the sentence has already climbed into the throat. In that instant, before we interpret, before we explain, before we defend, stop the outward sentence. Do not swallow it in violence. Let it dissolve before birth. Turn the attention 1 inch inward, as if you were closing a door very gently. Do not slam it, close it. And in the inner room, without strain, without posture, let the acknowledgement rise. God is. Be not afraid. God is. That is the turn. That is all. The storm breaks not when the world agrees with you, but when God is becomes the only fact you consent to. How does one turn? The body will help you if you ask it to be your ally and not your ruler. Feel your feet in your shoes or your sandals. Feel the weight of yourself on the earth. Soften the jaw, just a fraction, and let the tongue rest. Lower the shoulders so they return to their rightful home. Unclench the hands, even if only within. Let the breath fall, not as a technique to produce a state, but as a sign that you are not on trial before an idol. While you do this, keep the lips still or moving only in that inner mantra. Be not afraid. God is. Keep the eyes ordinary. Do not perform sanctity. We are not here to become spiritual actors. We are here to withdraw the signature that gives a second power authority in our house. What happens in that turn is not psychological delay. It is governmental change. The mind is a quick storyteller. It loves a plot. It writes motives, drafts counter speeches, predicts outcomes, and then enrolls the body to prove its case. The turn is the interruption of that prosecution. It is the moment you refuse to let fear finish its argument. Be still and know, and not be clever and prevail. In the stillness that follows the simple God is, you will notice something subtle. The inner compulsion to be right weakens. The need to vindicate a self begins to loosen. The imagined consequence that pressed upon you as law finds no statute to stand on. Why? Because the only law acknowledged in that room is God, and there are not two powers. Now, of course, you will say, but is the mantra not just a phrase? A phrase on the lips is nothing. A phrase allowed to carry us into presence is everything. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. Do not swing God is like a club at a person or a condition. Do not hurl it across the table to correct another. Do not paste it on your face to look superior. Keep it as a secret bell inside your temple. When struck, it does not strike your neighbor. It gathers your scattered consent and returns it to the altar. Enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut the door, pray to thy Father in secret. The secrecy is not for show. It is the very way the energy of reaction is deprived of audience and fuel. Let me give you the sequence and keep it so simple you can carry it into a crowded hallway. 1. Stop the outward sentence. 2. Turn attention within an inch and feel your feet. 3. Soften the jaw, release the shoulders, let the hands be gentle. 4. Let the inner acknowledgement rise and be enough. God is. Be not afraid. God is. Do not embellish. 5. Wait 1 or 2 breaths in that room until the taste of presence is more real than the taste of the insult. 6. Ask without hurry, Father, what is mine to do? Or say nothing and remain until the answer appears as calm clarity. Then, and only then, speak, act, or be still. If you find that no action is required, resist the old habit to fill the space. If action is given you, it will carry no poison, no tremor of self-defense, no need to win. It will be clean. You will notice, if you stay honest, that the most difficult part is not the inner turn. It is renouncing the deliciousness of the story. The self loves to be the hero, or at least the righteous victim. If you must, confess it privately to the Father and let it go. I release the need to be right. Lay that on the altar with the rest. In that surrender, you will find the presence meeting you without reprimand. The grace does not scold, it simply removes the ground from under the drama. We are not suppressing emotion. We are not decorating it with spiritual phrases. We are allowing the light to report the truth. There is no second power to defend against, no rival to defeat. The wave was loud. It was not law. Keep the practice hidden. Go and tell no man. If you stop mid-sentence and close your eyes theatrically, you have already left the room. If you announce to the table, I am turning inward now, you have already turned outward. Let your practice be like breath, known to you and to the Father alone. The fruit will show itself without advertisement. Your tone will be quiet where once it was sharp. Your word will be few where once they were many. Your action will be simple where once it was tangled. And someone will say, you've changed. You can say thank you, but inwardly smile because you know it wasn't your effort. It was that you ceased consenting to a storm and consented to God. Will there be times when you forget and the sentence escapes? Yes. We have taken many years to learn 2 powers. We will not always remember one in an instant. When you discover you have reacted, do not make a second error by reacting to your reaction. Close the door again. Even in retrospect, the turn is effective. Go into the room and say, Father, I withdraw that signature God is. If amends are required outwardly, you will be told, and you will make them without self-hatred. If silence is required, you will keep it without pride. There is no condemnation in the secret place. There is correction without sting. That is how you will know you have truly turned. You may ask, how long must I stay in the room? As long as it takes for the outer to lose the right to define you. Sometimes that is 1 breath. Sometimes it is 10. Sometimes you will carry God is like a soft flame through a meeting, through a day, through a night. Do not time the presence. Do not audit the minutes. Abide. In proportion as the word abides in you, you will bear fruit richly. Not fruit of triumph over persons, but fruit of peace, harmony, wholeness, completeness, perfection, infinite good appearing in ways you did not design and at hours you did not schedule. Remember this also. The turn is not a lever for outcomes. If you try to bend appearances with it, you have already left the sanctuary and gone back to the outer court with its bargains. We are not negotiating, we are worshiping. The outcome of worship is always the same. God is felt as the only fact. From that fact flows whatever is needed: courage, silence, a no, a yes, a hand outstretched, a step back. And because it comes from one power, it carries one presence. It leaves no residue of bitterness, no aftertaste of fear. So keep this micro-practice near, but keep it quiet. Hold it as you would hold a small lamp in the night, shielded from the wind by your own hands. Use it in the grocery line, in the office doorway, on the phone before the first word, standing in your kitchen when an old story knocks with a familiar rhythm. Stop, turn, feel, soften, acknowledge, wait, then live. Do not trust me. Test it. You will find the precise thing we have been promising. The storm breaks at the moment you turn inward and let God is be the only fact you consent to. Be not afraid. God is. Let us carry this right into the place where we forget most quickly, the moment we are misunderstood or accused. You know the scene. A word in a meeting is twisted. A friend reports what you said, and you did not say it that way. An email arrives, short, sharp, assigning to you a motive you do not recognize. Before the eye has reached the last line, the body is already in motion. Heat in the chest, tightening in the jaw, 10 answers queued. The ego, poor homeless thing, rushes out and shouts, "Defend me now or we will die." And we have learned to obey it on schedule. We fire back, or we go quiet and rehearse our case all night. Either way, the storm is hired. We have laid wages on its table, and it will work. Now here is where our one practice enters, not as theory, but as government. The first instant is not failure, it is our doorway. Recognize the surge. Do not attach a verdict to it. Do not say, "I should not feel this," and add shame to fire. Simply notice, the wave has risen. Then stop the outward sentence. Let it dissolve unspoken. Turn 1 inch inward. Feel your feet. Soften the jaw a fraction. Let the hands be gentle. And in the inner room, let the acknowledgement be enough. Be not afraid. God is. Do not decorate it. Do not argue. Just let it be the only fact to which you consent. Wait 1-2 breaths until the pressure to prove yourself loosens and the presence has the right of way. From here, words may come. They will not be hot. They will be clear. "No, that is not accurate. Here is what I intended." Or, "I won't continue this conversation while voices are raised. Let's pause and return." Or, "I understand your concern. I see it differently, and here is why." Or, silence may be given you, and you will take it, not as surrender to humiliation, but as fidelity to one power. You will find that you can set a boundary without the aftertaste of bitterness. You can speak truth without the tremor of self-defense. You can leave a room without slamming any door within. Non-reaction is not non-action. It is action divorced from poison. It is the master standing before accusation without inner heat. And then, when the Father within moves, speaking a word that is yes or no, clean and sufficient. Let me give you a little picture from our own doorway. A man wrote to me once that in a quarterly review he was told, "You threw your teammate under the bus." He had not. He felt the knife. In the old way, he would have produced dates, logs, combative emails. Instead, he told me this later, he stopped the outward sentence, placed both feet under the table, let the shoulders fall, and in the heart said, "Father, thou art the government here. God is." He waited. The room did not change, but the government did. Then he said simply, "That isn't so. Here is what I said, and here is my intent." He made one request for a follow-up with all three parties present. No heat, no sarcasm. He did not need anyone to be wrong in order to be whole. And he told me afterwards, the surprise was not their response. It was that I walked out of that room without a storm inside. That is dominion. Do not measure the practice by the world's applause. Measure it by the absence of poison within. Use this small test and keep it private. Ask yourself before you speak or move, must someone else be wrong for me to be whole? If the answer is yes, you are in reaction, no matter how polished the tone. If the answer is no, if there is a fullness present before you act, you are in remembrance. The action may look the same on the surface. A boundary is set, a correction is made, a departure is chosen. But inwardly, one carries a toxin and multiplies storms. The other carries peace and ends them at the root. One leaves you restless, rehearsing, seeking allies. The other leaves you quiet, with no need to collect witnesses. One tastes like metal in the mouth, the other like clean water. And what of injustice, you say? Are we to be quiet while a weaker one is harmed? No. Silence then would be consent to a second power, masquerading as virtue. But neither do we hire hatred to do God's work. We do precisely as we have learned. We turn first to the inner room. We yield our outrage to the altar. We remember God is. We ask, Father, what is mine to do? Out of that presence may come the courage to intervene, to object, to shield, to call the necessary authority, to say with authority and without insult, no. It may require that we stand in the doorway and refuse entry. It may require that we write the letter, file the report, take the case. But when it issues from one power, it does not carry the seed of another storm. Let your yea be yea, and your nay be nay. In other words, let your word be clean of the need to conquer. The Master spoke woes to hypocrisy and turned over tables, but he did not do it to defend a personal self. He did it without believing in a rival law. Thou couldst have no power over me unless it be given of the Father. That is not a sentence of passivity. It is a declaration of jurisdiction. Now take a homelier scene. A message appears on a screen. It strikes an old nerve. The fingers move to reply, to correct, to sting back with precision. Stop the outward sentence. Close the inner door. Feel your feet. Be not afraid. God is. Wait for the heat to subside. Then ask, is a reply mine to give? You will be surprised how often it is not. Or you will be given one phrase shorter than your pride would like. Without any hooks for argument, send that or send nothing. Keep your practice hidden. Go and tell no man. Let the fruit appear as a quieter life. We are not trying to be nice. Niceness is a costume. It rips at the first hard tug. We are refusing to make another person our source, either of peace or of pain. As long as my wholeness depends upon your agreement, I must live at the mercy of your weather. That is slavery to two powers. In remembrance, the self we used to defend so fiercely is seen for what it was, a picture, a reputation, a bundle of stories. Our real life is hid with Christ in God. No email can reach it, no rumor can stain it, no praise can inflate it. In that security, we can afford to be plain. We can afford to be still. We can afford to be firm. We can afford to be kind. And sometimes we can afford to walk away. So make this your way in the next trigger that comes, which may be before you leave this building or the next time your name is spoken with a tone you dislike. Recognize the surge. Refrain from verdict. Return to the presence. Wait until the words arise from peace rather than fire. Then speak, act, or be still. Use the private test. Refuse to enroll anyone as your savior or your tormentor. Withdraw the signature you have been lending to the second power. Abide in the secret place and let the Father within do the works. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. And when it does, you will know it by this sign. Your action is clean, and when the scene is over, there is no storm to feed. Be not afraid. God is. Now let us come to the cleansing, without which our practice remains partial, and our peace temporary. We have learned to pause, to turn, to abide, and that is the foundation. But have you noticed that even after a clean action, a residue sometimes remains, a low hum of grievance, a private rehearsal of the wrong, a tightening when the name appears on your screen? That is not failure in the method. That is a signal that forgiveness has not yet done its work. Forgiveness is not a courtesy we extend to win spiritual points. Forgiveness is a law of God. It is the way grace moves when no obstruction is in the channel. Unforgiveness is the obstruction. Keep it in place, and the storm, denied permission to rage outwardly, will pace the house of your heart until it finds another door. Let us be very clear and very gentle with ourselves. By not cleansing ourselves of resentment, by cherishing our case, by rehearsing grievances as if they were prayers, we are withholding forgiveness, and when we withhold forgiveness, we are withholding the love of God from our own experience. Not that God withholds, God cannot, but our consent turns one way or the other. Unforgiveness is agreement with two powers. It enthrones the other as a cause of our state and bids them stay. We may never speak their name aloud. We may smile and be civil, yet inwardly the chair is kept for them at the head of the table, and every time we sit to eat, we feed them first. That is why reactions return. That is why quiet cannot root. We have left a rival power in office. You will recognize unforgiveness by its disguises. It calls itself prudence. I am just being wise. I will never trust again. It calls itself justice. When they feel what I felt, balance will be restored. It calls itself reserve. I am not angry. I am simply done. But try this simple test. Does the heart soften when the face appears in memory, or does it harden? Do we bless them easily into God's care, or does the mouth twist inwardly and say, "Let God deal with them"? There you have your answer. Resentment, rehearsed grievances, silent punishment, the withdrawal of warmth, the little sentence we keep in the pocket to pull out later. Each one is a vote cast for a second power. Each one is a small storm generator. Now, of course, someone will say, are we to excuse behavior? Are we to call evil good? No, that is not forgiveness. That is confusion. To forgive is not to erase the need for wise boundaries, clear no's, or necessary consequences. To forgive is to refuse to hold anyone, including ourselves, as a presence apart from God. It is to remove the idol from the altar, to stop praying to harm, to stop defining our life by what was done or undone. There are not two powers. There is one. Forgiveness is the inner act by which we re-establish one power as the government of our consciousness. Then, if a no must be said, it will be said without poison. If a door must be locked, it will be locked without hatred. If a distance must be honored, it will be honored without the thorns of secret revenge. Neither do I condemn thee. That is forgiveness. Go and sin no more. That is wisdom. Both may live in the same breath when the Father within doeth the works. Because forgiveness is a law, It can be practiced, and it will bear fruit in proportion as we practice. There are two forms, and let us be honest about the need for both. First, there is direct forgiveness, the quiet interior release that springs up when grace is felt and the offense loses weight. It sounds like this within, I release you, I withdraw from you the power to define my state, I loose you and let you go into the government of God. Do not shout it, do not announce it, keep it secret between you and the Father. Go and tell no man. If it is given that you speak words of reconciliation outwardly, you will know. But the essential forgiveness is interior, law-governed, and immediate. You will feel the channel clear. You will feel the breath return to its rightful ease. Be not afraid. God is. Then there are times when direct forgiveness is not ours to give, at least not today. The hurt is too near. The imagination keeps returning to the scene and rewriting it. The heart strains and cannot lift the weight. In those moments, do not force a performance. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. Take your inability into the secret place and borrow the Master's prayer. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Do not say it as a barb. Say it as a request to the one who is forgiveness to perform itself in you. Add to it, if you will, Father, forgive me for holding a second power. Restore thy government in this consciousness. Leave it there. Do this daily, if need be. The law will work. One morning you will notice the name arises and there is no catch in the throat. The story visits and there is no heat to feed it. That is forgiveness accomplished, not by you, but in you. Now let us make this very practical, because a law that cannot be entered now is still only a sentence. Call to mind, quietly, one person or institution you have made into a power over your peace. It could be a family name that never loses its sting. It could be a company or a policy that feels like a hand on your neck. It could be a movement, a party, a bureaucracy, a courthouse door. Hold it for a moment in the light, not to analyze it, but to see what you have been doing with it. Notice what rises, tightness, argument, a case well prepared. Now stop the outward sentence. Turn 1 inch within. Feel your feet. Soften the jaw. Let the hands be gentle, and whisper in the heart, be not afraid, God is. Stay there until the sense of presence is the only fact you are consenting to. Then say, silently and simply, I withdraw the authority I loaned you. I release you and place you and me and this matter under the government of God. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Father, forgive me for consenting to two powers. God is. Then be still. Wait a breath or two. If you feel the release, do not decorate it. If you do not labor. Repeat the prayer each time the image returns. The law is at work, whether you feel it or not. Do not confuse this with reconciliation. Forgiveness is interior and unconditional. Reconciliation is outward and sometimes unwise. In some cases, you will be moved to speak, to make amends, to invite a new conversation, to rebuild trust slowly with clean bricks. In other cases, you will be told to keep your distance, to leave a situation, to let a court or a process proceed. The sign that you are moving under one power is always the same. There is no poison in the movement. There is no need to injure, to recruit allies, to reduce another so that you may rise. Even a firm no, when issued from forgiveness, tastes like clean water. It ends a storm rather than setting a new one on its feet. I knew a woman, let me tell it simply, who wrote me that for 3 years she had carried a private war with a former partner. She had built her inner courtroom and kept the trial in session day and night. She adopted our small practice. Each morning before speaking to anyone, she entered the room, felt her feet, said, God is, and then, not hypocritically but humbly, Father, forgive him. He knew not what he did. Father, forgive me. I knew not what I was doing, making him a second power. She kept it hidden. She did not post it. She did not perform it. In 6 weeks, she wrote, "The strangest thing has happened. He is still himself. The past is still the past, but the case has been dismissed within me. I am free." That is what I mean by law. Not mood, not willpower, government. Now take this with you into the next temptation to rehearse. When the mind begins its familiar parade, do not scold it, cleanse it. Say quietly, "I will not pay admission to this theater." Close the door. Be not afraid. God is. Then, according to your capacity in that moment, either forgive directly, "I release you into God," or offer the prayer of the helpless but willing, "Father, forgive." Do this not once, but as a way, and you will make room for an immediate peace that does not depend on the behavior of any person or institution. In proportion as forgiveness flows, Christ consciousness is felt, not as a glow, but as jurisdiction. And where Christ governs, storms have no authority, because they have lost their fuel. Now we come to a word that is on many lips and very little understood: gratitude. And I must ask you to bear with me while we correct something tenderly, because we are not here to shame good hearts. We are here to align them with the one power. Many of us have been grateful in a way that still binds us to the wheel. We say, "I'm so grateful the crisis passed," or "I'm grateful the test came back clear," or "I'm grateful the promotion arrived." And of course, humanly, relief is sweet. But notice what is hidden underneath that sentence. I am grateful because that other thing, illness, lack, humiliation, had power until it stopped. That is not gratitude, that is polite consent to two powers. Now, of course, I do not mean that we refuse to smile when harmony appears. I mean that if our gratitude is for the form, we have made the form our God, and we have left ourselves vulnerable to its changes. True gratitude goes far beyond money, beyond results, beyond headlines, beyond applause. True gratitude is recognition. It is the quiet, interior yes to the activity of spirit that was present before the appearance changed, while the appearance seemed loud, and after it quieted. It is not a payment rendered to God for services, not a tip left on the table because our order arrived hot. We are not patrons and God a waiter. We are branches abiding in the vine. Gratitude, rightly understood, is the sap between them. It is the acknowledgement of life flowing, health, harmony, wholeness, completeness, perfection, infinite good, irrespective of surface weather. Let me say it another way. If you say, "I'm grateful the storm stopped," you have secretly granted the storm jurisdiction and then praised its mercy. If you say instead, "Thank you, Father, that thou art," you have withdrawn consent from the storm's supposed power and placed your awareness under the government of one. Gratitude, then, is not relief that the outer ceased. It is remembrance that the inner never ceased. Be not afraid. God is. That is the whole of it. Sing those words inwardly if you must, but let that be the ground of your thanksgiving. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. Gratitude is one of the ways truth uses you to keep consciousness clear of idols. Now, how shall we practice? Keep it very simple and very secret. When the wave first rises, do not perform a thankful speech. Close the door gently. Feel your feet. Soften the jaw. Let the hands be gentle and whisper in the heart, "Thank you, Father, for being." Not for winning, but for being. Not for control, but for peace. Not for changing them, but for governing all. Thank you that thy presence is here before a word is spoken. Remain 1-2 breaths as the sense of spirit gathers the scattered pieces of your consent. You will feel the atmosphere shift. A clean air enters the room, not because the outer wind changed, but because you placed your attention where wind has no authority. Gratitude is attention. Gratitude is alignment. Gratitude is remembrance. Use prompts that keep you on holy ground. Thank you that there is only one power. Thank you that I live and move and have my being in God. Thank you that the peace I feel now is not fragile, not borrowed, not at the mercy of any person or policy. Thank you that wisdom, not haste, governs my next word. Keep these silent. Go and tell no man. If you hear yourself telling the table how grateful you are for your beautiful practice, you already know the attention has left the altar for the marketplace. Return. Be not afraid. God is. Let gratitude be the fragrance of that sentence, not a performance about it. I can tell you a little story, and you will forgive me for using it as a mirror. A man once pressed my hand and said, "I must thank you. After your talk, I received a check, and I am so grateful for that money." Well, of course, I said thank you, and inwardly I smiled, because I knew it wasn't the talk and it wasn't the check. His gratitude, if properly placed, would not be for currency, which comes and goes. It would be for the recognition that there is a presence meeting human needs unerringly, and that presence did not awaken because he attended a lecture. Your gratitude is not for a healed symptom or a raised figure. Your gratitude is for a living witness that God is available on earth today, as in the beginning, and that nothing, no ledger, no diagnosis, no rumor, ever held real power. Direct your gratitude to spirit, and the forms will come and go without binding you. Notice also how gratitude feeds non-reaction. Reaction stares at the wave and tries to bargain with it. Gratitude turns its face to the sun and forgets to negotiate. Reaction energizes the scene. Gratitude abides in the atmosphere of spirit where scenes cannot sustain themselves. In that air, the heat dies for lack of oxygen. Try it at the next small flash. A message lands, the body tightens. Close the outward sentence. Turn within. Thank you for being. Thank you for peace now. Thank you that there is no power here but God. Wait. You will find that clarity, not compulsion, writes the reply, or erases the need for one. You will discover that you can step aside from a provocation without the ache of self-betrayal because you did not step aside from yourself. You stepped into it. Do not make gratitude into a lever to get more of anything. If you thank spirit in order to extract a result, you have made a bargain and you are back under two powers, spirit as the grantor, form as the prize. We are not negotiating, we are worshiping. Worship dissolves fear because it removes the second throne. Then, if fruit appears, peace, provision, a human reconciliation, we can enjoy it without anxiety, hold it without clinging, release it without loss. The thanksgiving remains because its object remains. God is. Make a small rule for yourself in these days. When the mind wants to say, "Thank goodness that is over," pause, turn within, change the sentence. Thank you, Father, that thou art here, that thou were here, and that thou will be here regardless of appearances. When something sweet arrives, pause. Thank you, not for the sweetness, but for the presence whose nature is sweetness. When something difficult appears, pause. Thank you, not for the difficulty, but for the unassailable peace by which it is governed. Keep this hidden. Embark on this quiet thanksgiving as a way of breathing. You will find that gratitude, rightly placed, is not a mood, but a mantle. It rests upon you as a steady climate. In that climate, storms lose their spectacle and, finally, their audience. Be not afraid. God is. Now comes the simplest and the hardest part. You will not be out of this room 5 minutes before an invitation arrives to believe in a second power. That is not a threat. It is the kindness of the law making practice possible. As surely as seed meets soil, truth meets the day. Expect it, welcome it, and do not be surprised. The phone will light with a headline crafted to harvest your fear. A comment will appear under something you wrote. clever, baited, inaccurate. A family voice will sound in a tone that has been practicing in your nervous system since childhood. The market graph will dip a little red line and your breath will follow it down. A twinge will pass through the knee you have already named bad, and 10 histories will stand up at once and demand attention. Each one will say, now, react now, defend, explain, predict, fear. And there, right there, is the altar. The altar is your consent. There are not two powers, there is one. Let us be very plain about modern forms. Outrage cycles thrive on rented consent. They bill your attention by the minute. Comment wars look like conversation, but they are usually rehearsals of self and borrow their energy from the need to be right. Family systems, God bless them, carry grooves older than your adult wisdom, and they will play the record if you drop the needle where it has always dropped. Financial pressure will try to masquerade as responsible urgency. Health scares will pose as prudence, but where panic's breath, all of them have a single premise, that something outside can govern the inside without your say-so. The practice we are learning denies that premise and denies it privately, quietly, without performance. Be not afraid. God is. Here is the way we keep our footing when the invitation comes. We do not fight the mind. We do not try to sand down every thought that arises. We could spend a lifetime polishing the furniture while the house burns. We choose what we consent to first. First thought practice, we will call it. The wave rises, let it rise. The body tightens, notice it. No verdict, no apology. Then, before you answer the device, before you answer the person, before you answer your own fear, answer God. Stop the outward sentence, close the mouth gently, turn an inch inward, feel your feet on the floor, soften the jaw a fraction, let the hands be gentle, whisper within, be not afraid, God is. Remain 1-2 breaths until you can feel, even faintly, that presence is the only fact to which you are consenting. Only then take the next step. Make a simple rule and keep it like a key in your pocket. No replies while the body is in adrenaline. If you can feel heat in the face, metal in the mouth, a tightness across the shoulders, a speed in the fingers, the breath living up in the throat, no replies, no texts, no emails, no long messages composed with shaking hands, no arguments launched while your jaw is a fist. Return first to the secret place. Close the screen. Stand up and place your feet square. Breathe, not as a technique to get calm, but as a sign of consent to one power. Thank you, Father, that thou art. Govern this consciousness now. When the atmosphere clears, sometimes it is 60 seconds. Sometimes it is a slow walk around the building. Words will come clean or no words will come at all, and both will be right. Extend the rule to decisions that love to be made in fear. No clicking send while angry. No buying out of dread. No selling to stop a picture in your head from playing. No medical horror Googling at midnight to feed a story that has not asked for bread. First, the inward turn. Father, what is mine to do? Out of that, you may place a call to a physician with clarity instead of catastrophe. Out of that, you may phone the banker with facts and a quiet voice instead of a plea. Out of that, you may compose a 3-sentence email that ends a skirmish instead of a 3-page manifesto that starts a war. Non-reaction is not non-action. It is action taken only after jurisdiction is restored. Now, we will fail at this. Can we say that and remove the hook before it finds your cheek? We will fail. We will hit send from heat and then want to hide. We will speak a sentence from panic and hear the tin of it as soon as it lands. Do not let failure be hired as a new second power. In that very moment, return. Close the inner door. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Father, forgive me. I knew not what I was doing, consenting to 2 powers. If repair is needed, make it cleanly. I spoke from heat, That was not right. Here is the correction. No self-justification, no dramatic self-accusation. We simply step back under government and continue. You can't use truth, but truth can use you, even after a stumble, if you will offer it your consent again. Cultivate a light watchfulness. Not tenseness, not suspicion of the world, but the watchman's calm at the gate of consciousness. He does not wrestle with every passerby. He simply checks for one credential, one power. Does this thought ask me to grant reality to something apart from God? Does this story insist that my peace depends upon another's behavior? Does this urgency taste of poison? If so, it waits outside until government is restored. Remember, too, the sign of readiness. When you can bless the one you are about to address silently without condition, you are ready to speak or write. Until then, be still. Let us bring this very close. You will step out, and a driver will nose past with impatience. The old sentence will rise, the one that pretends to keep you safe by making another wrong. Stop it at the lips. Be not afraid. God is. You will see a headline declaring the end of your peace. Be not afraid. God is. A sibling will phone with that tone. Be not afraid. God is. Each time the work is the same. We refuse to pay admission to duality. We stand not passively, but royally under one. Out of that, we answer or we do not. Out of that, we move or we stay. Out of that, we live. Keep this hidden. Do not quote your practice to win points. Go and tell no man. Let the evidence be found, if anywhere, in the unremarkable quiet that enters your day. In a moment, we will set a pattern for the coming days, a small experiment that will make this abiding habitual. For now, carry one sentence into the first 5 minutes and the next 5 after that. Be not afraid. God is. If you will give that your first consent, the world will still do what the world does, but you will not hire its storms, and they will find they have lost their wage. Now we set the pattern, not because patterns save us, but because patterns train consent. You may leave here feeling lighter, you may agree with every word, but transformation is not produced by hearing. It is produced by daily practice that trains us to abide before we respond. So we will embark together, quietly, without announcement, on a 30-day experiment, less than 30 days for some, to prove the principle by lived results. Keep it hidden. Do not post it. Go and tell no man. Let the evidence, if any, be the unremarkable quiet that begins to accompany your steps. Begin each morning in the secret place, before any device, before headlines, before messages. Ask you to rent them your peace. 5 minutes will do. 10 minutes if grace holds you. Sit, feet on the floor or folded as you prefer, and make no attempt to manufacture anything. We are not summoning God. God is. Close the eyes gently. Feel the body as it is without correction. Let the jaw soften a fraction. Let the hands be gentle. And in the heart, without effort, begin. Be not afraid. God is. Not as magic words, as consent. Let the sentence be the air you breathe, not a hammer you wield. If other thoughts move in, do not wrestle. Let them pass as birds across a sky you do not own. Return to one knowing. God is. Add, if it rises, the ancient assurance, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Remain until you can feel, faintly is enough, that presence is the only fact you are consenting to for this day. Then rise. Now you may read, now you may view, now you may answer, but you will do so with a governor upon the heart. Sometime before noon, give 2 to 5 minutes to forgiveness. Take a light inventory. Ask quietly, whom have I made a power over my peace since yesterday? A face will appear, a policy will flash. Your own name may arise. Do not debate. Do not tell the story, even in the mind. Place them in the light and practice the law. If strength is given, forgive directly. I withdraw the authority I loaned you. I release you. I place you and this matter under the government of God. If you cannot, and there will be days you cannot, go humbly to borrowing. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Father, forgive me. I knew not what I was doing, consenting to two powers. Restore thy government in this consciousness. Leave it there. No performance outwardly, no announcement of your magnanimity. You will find that, in proportion as you do this daily, the inner courtroom dims its lights and forgets to meet. In the afternoon or evening, choose a time you can keep. Take 2 to 5 minutes to recalibrate gratitude, not for outcomes, not for forms, not for a letter that arrived or a pain that passed. That is not gratitude. That is polite consent to two powers. Sit as you did in the morning, perhaps with the day's dust upon you, and say, "Thank you, Father, that thou art." Rest your thanks in being, not in getting. Thank you that there is only one power. Thank you that I live and move and have my being in God. Thank you that wisdom, not haste, governs this life. Let the praise attach to spirit alone. Forms may come and go across that altar without stealing the incense. In this way, gratitude becomes atmosphere rather than transaction. It keeps the heart facing the sun so that storms, however they perform, find no partner in you. All through the day, run the trigger protocol, quietly, as a watchman checks gates without fuss. A message lands with heat, a tone bites, a siren of urgency begins its song. Before you answer the world, answer God. Stop the outward sentence, close the mouth gently, feel the feet, soften the jaw. Let the hands be gentle, whisper within, "Be not afraid, God is." 1 breath, 2, wait until the poison drains from the tongue, until the metallic taste of fear recedes. Then, and only then, speak or act if something is yours to do. If the heat remains, do nothing outward. No replies while the body is in adrenaline. No buying out of dread. No selling to silence a picture. First the inward turn, then the outward step, if given. In this way, non-reaction is not passivity. It is jurisdiction restored before motion. I would add, because we will meet it, a rule for failure that keeps failure from becoming a second power. You will miss mornings. You will forget forgiveness until midnight, and then remember with a start. You will answer from heat and hear the tin of it echo back to you. Do not hire guilt to punish you into goodness. In that very moment, return. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Father, forgive me. I knew not what I was doing. If amends are needed, make them simply. I spoke from haste. That was not right. Here is the correction. Then begin again at once, even if the clock says it is late. You can't use truth, but truth can use you at 3 a.m. as readily as at dawn, if you will offer it your consent. Some like a token to mark the 30 days. Keep it private, a small dot on a calendar you alone see. A pebble moved from one dish to another at night, not to create pride, to build remembrance. Each mark says only this: consent was offered today. If you miss, the dish does not scold, it waits. Tomorrow you will move the pebble again, and do not measure your success by outer weather. Measure by the speed with which you remember, by the shortening of the gap between wave and inward turn, by the absence of poison in necessary words, by the ease with which a once sticky name passes through consciousness like a cloud no longer hired to rain. You will find a change in your life in 30 days, less than 30 days for many. If you will keep to this simple order: daily abiding, daily forgiveness, daily gratitude, and the trigger protocol. Not because the talk was clever, not because the plan is novel, but because law is faithful. If you abide in the word and let the word abide in you, you shall bear fruit richly. The fruit may show as a calm that surprises you in a room where you once rehearsed speeches. It may appear as clarity that edits an email down to 3 sentences that close a door without slamming it. It may be felt as a quiet joy in the middle of a day that offered no particular reason, because joy does not need a reason. It needs a root. Keep it hidden. No testimonials yet. No advertising grace as if it needed our help. If after the 30 days you look back and say, something has shifted, you will know what has changed. Consent. You drew back unto yourself your God-given dominion and ceased loaning it to shadows. The world will still do what the world does, but you will not hire its storms. They will discover they have lost their wage, and you will discover that Christ consciousness is not a mood that visits. It is an abiding that governs. Be not afraid. God is. What then does life look like when consent has been retrained? When remembrance begins to arrive before reaction can hire you? It is not numbness. It is not a gray neutrality that no longer cares. It is freedom. It is the felt slackening of compulsion, the end of rehearsals, the quieting of that tribunal within that used to sit late and loud. The wave may still rise. Of course it does. Weather continues. But it does not become a storm because there is no believer to blow upon it. Sensations still move across the body, and sometimes tears still come, but they wash rather than drown. Thoughts visit, but they do not pack a suitcase and move in. And the return to peace, this is one of the first fruits, grows quicker and quicker, until you are surprised to find that you are already home before you notice you had stepped away. Decisions that once required a committee of fears begin to simplify. Words grow shorter and cleaner. No can be spoken without enmity. Yes ceases to be a plea for approval and becomes a rightness felt in the bones. You discover that you can leave a message unanswered, not from spite, but from clarity. You can correct a mistake, your own or another's, without needing a villain to justify your firmness. You can walk out of a room that traffics in heat without carrying the room inside you for hours. In other words, action remains, or even increases in skill, but the poison is drained from it. Non-reaction is not inactivity, it is right action that required no sacrifice of peace to be born. Do not imagine, therefore, that the outer scenes will cease to appear. They will come as they always have, only they cannot complete themselves. The cycle breaks mid-sentence. The jab lands, but the hook does not follow. The argument assembles in your mind and then forgets what it came for. The worry begins its monologue and runs out of breath. Why? Because the premise has been removed. The second throne is gone. The play opened, yes, but finding no audience, no hired believer, it closed for lack of ticket sales. When remembrance becomes our reflex, emotional storms lose their believer, and they end. You will recognize the change first in the small hours. Waking at 2 or 3, you will find that the old motor has not immediately started. Even if a thought tries to start it, another awareness is nearer than it has ever been. Be not afraid, God is. And because that sentence is no longer a device, but a condition of consciousness, the body will take its cue, the breath will loosen, the heart will settle, and you will either rest again or rise to the day with a composure unborrowed from circumstances. By and by, that same composure will greet the daytime provocations, the meeting that used to shrink your chest, the tone that used to set your jaw, the bill that used to write your story for you. They will still visit, but they will not be given quarters. Thou couldst have no power over me unless it came from the Father in heaven. This is not defiance. It is description. One power is government. There is no rival jurisdiction. And let us say this humbly, because humility is the only safe climate for grace. We are not becoming powerful personalities. We are not adding a coat of spiritual armor to the old self and marching through the world as improved gladiators. We are becoming transparencies. We are thinning the personal sense so thoroughly that God's grace can appear, health, harmony, wholeness, completeness, peace, without our fingerprints on it. You can't use truth, but truth can use you. When it does, You will not feel large. You will feel light. You will not feel important. You will feel unburdened. Dominion, yes, but not domination. Guidance, yes, but not control. Authority, yes, but only because you have returned to being under authority. The fruit of this transparency, if you want to look for it, is found quietly. Sleep that is not drugged by exhaustion but given by rest. A stomach that no longer tightens at the sight of a name. A calendar that contains room inside its lines because hurry has lost its holiness. Conversations that close gently when their time is fulfilled rather than when their anger is spent. A body that moves in the world without bracing for impact. Not perfection of weather, no promise of that, but a constancy of climate within that we may call the atmosphere of the secret place. He that dwelleth there abides under a shadow that cools heat and brightens sight. How is this held? Not by effort, but by order. Abide, forgive, be grateful, for spirit, not form. Abide first, because without the sap there is no fruit. Without dwelling there is no shadow, no proof. Forgive daily, because old grievances are the kindling upon which storms love to feed. Remove it, and they flare once and go out. Be grateful, not as a transaction, but as recognition, for the presence that is the only fact. Let your thanks attach to being, not to getting, and gratitude will carry you back to the altar 10 times a day, without fuss. In this order, non-reaction becomes nearly effortless, not because we have built a fortress, but because we have ceased to rent rooms to enemies who do not exist. Keep it within. Go and tell no man. Let the evidence be found, if anywhere, in the ordinary blessings that cease to be extraordinary only because they have become steady, a tone of voice that no longer stings, a budget that no longer rules by panic, a relationship that no longer needs a winner to feel safe. If any should ask you what changed, you may say, if you must, I remembered. Do not perform your remembrance for applause. The vine needs no advertisement from the branch. The grapes speak without words. So we come to a close, which is not an end, but a beginning of steady practice. We have a simple creed for the day and the night, for the street and the room, for the inbox and the bedside. Be not afraid. God is. Abide in the presence. Forgive to remove obstruction. Be grateful for spirit. Let this be your private liturgy, your continuous prayer. In that liturgy, storms will still send invitations, but they will not find your consent in the envelope, and you will discover what has ever been true and now at last is lived. Life governed from within by one, health, harmony, wholeness, completeness, peace. Be not afraid. God is. Bless you.